Hayden Collins is a conservative Republican radio host based out of Northwest Georgia and Pennsylvania. For 20 years, Hayden and his family have served their region and all of Georgia and the rest of the country as foster adoptive parents. Hayden also works with the Boy Scouts of America, Civil Air Patrol, employer support of the Guard and Reserve, and the Georgia Youth Challenge. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hayden Collins.
Outstanding. Thank you for the great introduction. It's Saturday. This is going to be an important part of this presentation for writing press releases and talking about news cycles and how things happen in the press, because Saturday is often a good day to get these kind of things out if you're an activist. AtCom, thank you for having me along, by the way, and preparing to learn about this activism and what you can do as activists to help yourself out. We're going to break down a couple of things today. Part of this is going to be about breaking down how to do a press release. But first of all, we have to recognize news cycles and other items. For example, September is Emergency Preparedness Month. And, I've managed to get myself into a position where I'm a consultant for EMA, which is the Emergency Management Group. And we're getting ready for a joint exercise. And we're going to have some of the youth contributors from my show. And we've created a public service announcement. And imagine the avenues that we're reaching out to right now to extend our influence. So once we write a press release, we know where it's going to go. But we have to encourage people to be prepared. And what we're going to do today is encourage you to be prepared. Now, there's a difference when you have an emergency preparedness kit. So it's September, you have an emergency preparedness kit. And you'll want it to be a good one. And you hope to never have to use it. And for God help us if we do have to use it. But after this event, after we're done talking today, you're going to have an activist toolkit, an emergency activist toolkit. And I hope you can't wait to use it. So there's going to be a good opposite for you. Now, the youth contributors we have on our show, they produce weekly information for politics with, of course, a North Georgia sense of humor. And we broadcast through Roku Network, iHeartRadio, University Networks, and all the segments are on YouTube. But the roundtable we talk about news cycles sometimes. And we call the roundtable the Intelligent Syndicate because of all of the intelligent individuals that are a part of it. Now, you have to look at how much is being covered by the news cycle. So you are going to put together a press release. You have something very important. You're very active about something, and you want to get this idea out. So you're multitasking a little bit because we're either multitasking, not paying full attention to what's going on, or because we've been led to question our own judgment and our ability to understand what we see and rely on in the media. Because, think about this debate we just had this past week. The debate we had this past week was very, very important because a lot of people watched it. But there was a lot of people that didn't watch it. So they had to rely on the talking heads to tell us what we see and what we hear. And a lot of people depend on the commentary of those talking heads to give them the presidential debate and the candidates and tell us what happened. Either they don't have time, they're busy doing something. Now, this is important when it comes to press releases and news cycles. Now, you've got to get a feeling for this. First of all, take your idea. And you have to be aware of what the talking heads are saying at the time, but not to be controlled by them. You don't want to be controlled by this. So what I figured I'd do, I'd break down some characteristics for you. And some characteristics I want to break down. Let's look at the political spectrum of the news outlets, because you're going to have to pick and choose your news outlet that you want this to go to, that you want your press release to go to. So, for example, some time ago, we could say MSNBC was part of the Communist News Network because no matter what happened, they would take this far, far left position. But then again, we had Fox that would take the far, far right position, and they could be considered the Communist News Network, depending on your point of view. But what you have to do is look at what's being presented. And there's some conditions there, too. Let's break down the formulas. Let's say for the sake of discussion, I'll choose a neutral network. We'll choose NPR. NPR has a formula. If you turn on NPR tomorrow and you listen to NPR, listen to their formula. The formula is what is wrong, who's to blame for it, and how do we fix it, or who do we blame till we get them to fix it. That is their formula for almost every one of their news broadcasts. So when you see what they're saying, this is what they're saying. Don't do that for your press release. Yeah, don't select a formula. Be in a position to where you can take your press release and you can identify your issue. You can present a similar situation that's existing in the news cycle. You can relate to that situation, relate it to your press release, and present it in such a manner that's accepted by everyone in that news outlet. Geez, Hayden, what did you just say? All right, here you go. Fox News. If you are writing a press release for Fox News, you know your audience is basically a conservative audience. A lot of evangelical right, but a basically conservative audience. Now, so if you were to write a press release, you would not want to write a left-leading press release to Fox News because it will not get any airtime. It will not be released. They will put it in file 13, the trash can, close their eyes and walk away. But if you were to write that for MSNBC, you might get airtime. So know your audience. Okay, so let's look at what's working and what to do and what not to do. Know your audience. That's a key thing. Be clear about your intention. Now, without this sounding like some college course that you go in and talk to or some high school course, understand when we hit this news cycle, and I'll give you the best example. The day after a presidential debate is a lousy time to do a press release because nobody's going to pay attention to you because they're paying attention to everything that's going on in the news cycle. That is just a terrible time. You could write a press release that God is coming to the planet and everything's going to be fine and nobody's going to pay attention to you because the presidential debate is dominating the news cycle. And you have to avoid these kind of dominations. So let's look at some time cycles. You write your press release, you do the basic, you be clear about your intention and what you want your audience to do. What do you want them to do with the information? So you select the time cycle you want, you select the news cycle, you select what you want your audience to do with the information. Meaning, for example, here's a good one. Don't post on Facebook during major news cycles because you won't get any attention. And everybody kind of knows these Facebook news cycles. You have a lot of working individuals out there that are on Facebook, especially during football season. So let's say, for the sake of discussion, it's Super Bowl weekend, and you're trying to get your activist note out. Well, if you're posting it to the same time they're posting 500 things about football, it's not going to get out. You're going to get very low exposure. You're going to get very low attention. If you write a blog, keep in mind your blog has what we like to call a 72-hour window of opportunity. So you wrote a blog. Here's your press release to go with the blog. You have 72 hours, and this is a rule of thumb, to get your press release out about that blog and what you're doing. But I will give you this piece of information. When you write that, wait 24 hours to make sure it's what you want to say. Always have somebody else edit your document. Always have somebody else edit your release. Don't edit your own information. And spell check is not your friend. It'll often change words that are spelt similarly but do not mean the same thing. Okay. Principles of uncertainty dictate your planning. Murphy's Law. 1/10 of a second will organize and will destroy at the same time your activist newsletter and what information you want to get out. Okay, for example, another example here. You want people to show up at a park at 10 o'clock in the morning and celebrate Veterans Day and free ice cream for everybody. So you wrote the blog, you wrote the press release, you're sending the press release out to your news outlets. So it's a veteran issue. So you think about what news outlets would take veterans issue. You want to send it to Legion. You want to send it to the VFW. You want to send it to probably United Way, Wounded Warrior, and then who supports those organizations. Go to the next level. If you have a news station that's constantly putting on Wounded Warrior, send it to them. Say, hey, in cooperation with Wounded Warrior, we've got this going on. We would like for you to put this on the air. We're out to help veterans. You're addressing an audience. You know who your audience is. You've written the press release, and you want them to pay attention to it. You reference your blog in that press release so people can go and read it. You now hit the airways. Okay, so when do you present it on Facebook or other Twitter accounts or so on and so forth? Rule of thumb for Facebook. Because of the working individuals driving to work in the morning and because of the individuals driving home at night, you match your releases against the press cycle. For example, you and I both know they have a 6 o'clock news cycle that happens. They know there's going to be 6 o'clock news. So if you were to do a press release, release it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, flood it in Facebook, flood it in Twitter, flood it in every opportunity you have, and send it to every news outlet you have. That gives these guys 3 hours to put something together to you, put it on the air, put it on the radio, respond to you, or ask questions. If you wait till the last moment, you're not going to hit that news cycle. But the most important thing about that 3 o'clock is people are already thinking about getting off work. They're pulling up their smartphones, checking Facebook, seeing what other people are doing, if there's some event going on, and boom, Shangri-La, there's your press release right there of your event coming up and your idea or what you're trying to present. The same thing happens at 9 o'clock in the morning because they have midday news. 3 hours before they have the opportunity to go on the air, shoot it out there, hit every news network, write down the information you want, what you want your readers to do. Because there are principles of uncertainty. And what I mean by principles of uncertainty, 1/10 of a second will occur. The biggest event we had in North Georgia this past year, they were having this great big Republican event. Oh, we're going to have a great big Republican fundraiser. It's going to be faith and family and freedom. Everybody show up to the park on Labor Day weekend. Wait a second. If I'm spending time with my family, why would I want to go to a Republican event on Labor Day weekend? They didn't think this through. They had to cancel the event 2 days before it happened, and they blamed it on the weather, and it was sunny skies all weekend long. Where they made their mistake was, A, they planned it during a weekend where if you were a family-minded individual, you're staying with your family. You're not going out to a public event. You have to think these things through. So know your audience. There's the example for you. Now that you know the avenue to get it out, now that you know the news cycles to get it out on and the times, and we can get more detailed on this in the question and answer session, but these are rules of thumb. You customize each event. You customize each press release. Do not do a bullet format press release. And don't repeat the same one over and over again. It's just annoying. People will put you on the automatic delete. One of the worst things about the Tea Party networks is every time they send out a press release every day, it's gotten to the point where people just don't even pay attention to it. They have lower and lower diminishing returns. And I hate to say this, but I see that a lot with the David Perdue campaign. Senator Perdue sends out press release day after day after day after day about issues. And you look at it and you're not seeing anything that's consistently different. So you don't even look at the press releases anymore. And he's getting diminishing returns. So your press releases that you send out, the information you send out, have to have measurable results. Now, how can you tell if your activism is measurable against your press release? If you're using social media, Snapchat, Twitter, so on and so forth, you can see the exposure. Facebook is a really good one. You can actually see how many people you contacted, the results of the people you contacted, and if it's being shared. And everybody that's in your activist network, and I mean this, raise your right hand, say, I solemnly swear. When something's produced as a press release, everybody shares it. Every time you share it, it's times 10 to your audience, to the 10th factor. So if you've got 10 people together, you write the press release, it's been edited, you know the time to release it, you know the avenues to release it, you know where you want to release it. Immediately after you do that, is you post it, you send an email to everybody, they go back and hit share, or they retweet it, or they take a snapshot and blow it out everywhere. They take a Tumblr, they fire it. 10 times 10 to the 10th power. And you keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. That creates a bandwagon effect for the press release, of course, but it also gains your audience. Now, another thing, keep in mind, one size does not fit all. Use the guidelines I've kind of presented to you, but gather your data and your method for distribution. So whatever you find that works, work with it. For example, if the 10-10 doesn't work, come up with another issue. Shoot it to all the Wounded Warrior individuals and have them share it. Ask them to share it because they're in their network and you want them to show up that weekend. Part of being an activist is knowing how to do an analysis of what you're getting out through trusted sources. And you'll lose credibility. And here's some ways you'll lose credibility. And once you lose credibility, you won't get it back. If you're sending the same press release out over and over again and you're not getting responses and nobody's paying attention to you, then you found yourself in a zone where you're getting diminishing returns. And once you lose that credibility, like the radio show and the news cycles, we do our show on Saturdays at noon. It's already done. The show was in the can before I came on here today. By the contract that we have, we don't release it on YouTube until after 5 o'clock on Sunday. So what we do is we release part of it on Monday during a slow news cycle, but if there's something that happens seriously Monday, we don't release it till Tuesday. We have a 24-hour window to release our information on our show for each show that we do all the way throughout the week. Now, the youth contributors, the correspondents, and everything they bring as their perspectives is based on current events. So we have to know who our audience are. So the roundtable, which is basically all youth correspondents and the information they produce, that goes out to the university networks because that's the audience. Now, this has been really fast. We've been kind of hold it to 15 minutes, but an emergency preparedness exercise. The most important thing that you learn is how to work with each other and know how to work together and who to trust and when disaster strikes. In our country, we see the disaster coming. You're an activist. You truly need to help identify and get into office those leaders and help work with this, those leaders that you can help work with. Same thing for your program. If you have a program you're pushing, you have to get leaders in that program to help you push that program. Treat it as an emergency. Treat that press release as a golden document. Select the portion of the news cycle that you need to get it into. Know your audience and understand what you're writing. You want them to react to something. You want your audience to do something based on your press release. So write an objective in that press release that they can do. There's pros and cons there too. I'm limited to 15 minutes. I'm at 15 minutes. So thank you for that. I understand there's question and answer that we go through at this time. So I will stand by for a second and see if this works out for Skype and how it works for delay.
Thank you. Am I on? Thank you so much, Hayden. I appreciate you coming into AdCon 3, offering that great insight into the world of the press. And yes, we do have some questions for you. First, simply, when you were describing when to do press releases and the differences between different agencies, for example, different media outlets, is there a particular person or staff position an activist should send their release to at a news station?
Well, and see, this is part of the contacts. Like I said, if you know somebody's, I use the veterans thing as an example, Wounded Warrior. If you know somebody at that news station that's done consecutive reports on Wounded Warrior, you're sending it to that individual. You would not send this press release to the individual that's covering Babies R Us. They're going to say, what are we going to do with this? And they're not going to get it to their coworker because they're not paid to look at that. You send it to the individual who's actually paid to look at that. So the best example here would be if it's a political press release and you're supporting a guy running for office. Well, don't send it to the news desk. Ask for the political correspondent for that particular station or the political correspondent for that particular newspaper and make sure that individual gets it.
Fantastic. You and I were talking earlier today, and you had mentioned something, and this is a question for me. You had mentioned something that you do is you kind of block yourself out from news cycles to do your job in order to report firsthand information that you're receiving. And so you're not, I don't know, perhaps maybe distorted or have any preconceived opinions about it. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you meant about that, how you stay focused on the intake of information in order to put the right information out and tying it to, as an activist, how we can best use that approach to promote our events.
First of all, let me say your opinion is the most important opinion out there. And what you're referring to is, as we do this political radio show every Saturday, and we have all the universities call in, we have high schools participating in this, I purposely do not listen to the political networks. I purposely void them out. For example, I watched the entire debate. I took my opinions, I wrote them down. I put everything that I understood that took place during that debate and wrote it down. I compared the Fox debate to what they did, to the CNN debate and how they performed. And I have to give CNN credit. They did an exceptional job. But I did not listen to any of the talking heads because they're there to sell cars and they're there to influence you. That's their press release. They want you to react to what they want. Well, your opinion is important. You as an activist, you're presenting your opinion. You're presenting your position, and you want people to react to you. Don't repeat what they're saying. Have a fresh idea. Have a fresh take that nobody else has. One of the fresh takes that we have off this last debate, which was, I don't want to say an epiphany, but you have to take it from the political activist point of view of what just took place. On the stage during the first debate, Fox News, it was, for lack of a better term, attack Donald Trump. And at that time, nobody had decided whether or not the establishment was on stage, or Donald Trump was on stage, or the American citizens were on stage. So something genius took place. And this is what I mean by know your audience. And some of you may have caught this and some of you may not have. During this last debate this last week, everybody was talking about how Donald Trump was being really quiet. Now, I'm not a Trump supporter. Don't jump out there and jump on me or anything like that. I'm not supporting anybody. I looked at what just took place between the two debates. Well, this appears to be an anti-establishment year. And with an anti-establishment year, who do you attack? Well, you attack the establishment. So if all the individuals up there on the stage had something to do with the establishment and they're attacking each other, well, you're attacking the establishment. You're not attacking the American people. You're not attacking the candidate. But apparently all of Donald Trump's support is coming from not the establishment. Let's just throw that out there. It's coming from American people. And I'm not going to say 100% or whatever the case may be. But it's coming from American people. So if you attack Donald Trump, you attack the American people. And he played that game so well on stage Wednesday. I'm losing my mind here. Wednesday, that everybody was wondering why Donald was being so quiet. But the attacks on Donald Trump were all tongue in cheek. Even Carly, picked on him for saying she had a beautiful face or something like that. I don't even know. But that was her tongue in cheek. There are no direct attacks against Donald because he is related to the American people. He's not related to the establishment. Now, why that's important? Geez, Hayden, you don't watch this stuff, you don't listen to stuff. Because I didn't watch this, because I didn't listen to the talking heads, I was not contaminated by their ideas. I had a fresh look on something that nobody else has approached it with. You can actually see the strategies that take place if you don't listen to the talking heads. You present your own ideas, you present your own insight. And once you start doing this more once or twice, you'll discover that you probably have a much better position and appeal than a talking head because you're not reading a script. You're actually developing your own ideas. Because 90% of the time, and keep this in mind, they're selling cars. If you turn on the news, their objective is to sell you something. They quit being the news in 1972 or 1973 when all of a sudden everything went crazy. But they're there to sell you something. And if they can't present news that gets your attention or gets you shocked and awed, you don't pay attention to the commercial. So the great thing about University Network and iHeartRadio and Roku Network is we don't advertise. There are no paid advertisers on our show. The universities contribute each their own individual, from University of Alaska, University of Hawaii, all across the United States. We have 8 high schools from Tennessee to Alabama to Georgia involved. And all it does is give these individuals an opportunity to do exactly what I said. Your opinion is important. You have the opportunity to express it. Don't listen to the talking heads. Make up your own mind, do your own research, and you'll have way different information that's put out online. Now, I hope that meets the criteria for what we're talking about.
Well, I think it does. I mean, anything that is offered that helps activism advance, activist organizations advance, is what we want to try and continue to put out here. And I believe what you just said does that absolutely. One final question while we wind up here in our last couple of minutes. This is from Ted Metz, who I believe you know. What are the essential elements that must be included in a press release? What are these, if there are 1, 2, or 3, what would you say has to be in a good press release?
They have to know who you are. So in the top block, whatever you're putting up there, graphics, name, they have to know who you are. Boom. They have to know what you're presenting. That's number 2. Then they have to know what to do. You have to tell them what to do in that press release. That's the top 3. Now, the final thing, and I didn't say this in the presentation, but let's throw this out there. I don't like boilerplate presentations. I don't like boilerplate press releases. But you have to have at least 3 or 4 lines at the very bottom of your press release that has to be copied to every press release going, I just got this. Who is this guy? And here's 3 lines telling me about this guy and where to find him. So put your media links, put your website, whatever you're doing there at the very bottom. But hit them with the idea at the top. Hit them with who you are at the top, and then tell them what you want them to do. Otherwise, your press release is nothing but a document that sits there and says, hey, we're doing this, have a nice day. I mean, that's the neutrality of Facebook. So often they create events on Facebook. and they're extremely neutral. Hey, show up to, Bob's barbecue. Okay, great. You hit yes, you hit no. Some people go, some don't. It doesn't matter. You got to tell them what you want to do, and you have to influence them through your opinion. And your opinion is important. It's way better than any talking head.
Hey, thank you so much. That's a great answer, of course, and I believe your presentation was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on AtCon 3. Look forward to working with you in the future. Be well.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Have a great day.